Don't you have people around you too? People whose bodies are long past grown, but what they do and think is completely childish. You see them at the office and in your neighborhood, right? They get sullen the moment things don't go their way, or they clam up after just a little bit of pushback, or when they open their mouths, it's always bad-mouthing someone. I'm talking about those who conveniently ignore their own mistakes but relentlessly pick on their subordinates for small failures. These kinds of people have common characteristics. Just knowing even one of these traits will make your life considerably easier. Instead of agonizing, "Why doesn't this person understand me?" you can now, in a good sense, give up and stop thinking, it's futile to try and reason with a baby. This perspective will be the most crucial way of thinking that runs through this entire discussion today. The first characteristic of a childish person is that they tend to run away from troublesome things and blame others. There was a time when a major protest erupted over a public works project. The officials in charge were completely intimidated. Even when we held meetings, it was nothing but excuses. The locals are the problem. The budget isn't enough. No one was trying to do anything about it themselves. I gathered them all together and roared at them. "Listen up, you officials. As long as you're blaming someone else, this job won't move forward by a single millimeter. If the locals are protesting, get your asses over there and talk to them. If the budget isn't enough, rack your brains to make it enough. Responsibility isn't something you push onto someone else. It's something you take upon yourself." I told them, "The resolve to take responsibility for your own work. If you can't do that, then quit being a public official right now." Isn't that right? Do you think a person who can't take responsibility is an adult? Adults in the old days would brace themselves before making excuses. Once they took on a job, they saw it through to the end and cleaned up their own mess. That was normal. There were even times when people staked their lives on it. Society was able to move forward precisely because there were so many of those real adults. But there are also those in the world who do the opposite. Childish adults certainly exist. Well, this connects to the second point, but blaming others is also a characteristic of a childish person. They have a bad day at home and take it out on their subordinates at work. They make others decide everything for them, and when the result isn't good, they do nothing but complain afterward. They're the boss, but if a project fails, they blame everyone around them. They never once touch on their own misjudgments or lack of preparation. There was a man I put in charge of an election. He was brimming with confidence. "Sir," he boasted, "leave this election to me. I guarantee we will win." I was fine with that. But once the campaign started, all I heard were bad reports from the local area. It seemed he was ignoring the opinions of the local leaders and forcing his own methods on them. The result was a devastating loss. At the post-election debriefing, I asked him for the cause of the defeat. This is what he said. "The local supporters didn't work hard enough. The opposing camp used dirty tricks. There wasn't enough support from above." He didn't mention his own tactical errors or misjudgments even once, blaming everything on those around him. To top it off, he started getting sullen. Pathetic, isn't it? Far from reflecting on his mistakes, he tries to silence others with that attitude. He is literally using his bad mood as a weapon. This is the third point. When things don't go their way, childish people try to manipulate their surroundings with a sullen attitude. People like this won't say, "Please do this." No, they can't say it. They spread the poison of their bad mood and apply silent pressure on those around them, as if to say, "Appease me, read my mind." And the people around them start walking on eggshells, constantly trying not to upset them. A certain faction leader was a perfect example of this. When something displeased him, he would let out an exaggeratedly loud sigh in the middle of a meeting and fall silent, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Then the other members, guessing that they had offended him, would start working to make sure his opinion was passed. You probably can't believe it, but there are children like this in Nagatacho, Japan's political district. He's disqualified as an adult, let alone a politician. So how should you deal with these kinds of people? The most important thing is your mindset. Understand that you're dealing with a kid and don't get emotional yourself. Think of their bad mood as being the same as a baby throwing a tantrum because they didn't get a toy. Therefore, you have absolutely no need to get flustered. In your mind, calmly distance yourself thinking, "Ah, there he goes, throwing a tantrum again." In short, treat them like children who just happen to have adult-sized bodies. Next, the fourth point. They think it's normal to have things done for them and they lack gratitude. People who are mentally immature believe that help and kindness from others are their natural right. For example, even if you cover for them when they're struggling at work or take the initiative to do things around the house, there's not a single word of thank you. On the contrary, if you slack off even a little, they might even complain, "Why didn't you do it?" There's a story about a certain bureaucrat. He was extremely talented, but for some reason he had no popularity. One time there was a bill he desperately wanted to pass, and he came to me begging for help. I valued his ability, so I backed him with the full force of my faction. The bill passed safely. But as soon as the bill passed, he stopped showing his face at my office. Not only that, but even when we saw each other at faction meetings, he just sat there with an expression like it was a matter of course. Not a single word of thanks. In the end, he couldn't get cooperation from anyone and was gradually pushed aside. If this were a child, well, I could understand. Children think being given things is just how the world works. But it's not okay for an adult to think that way. A person can't do anything alone. It's only with the help of others that great work can be done. A person who doesn't understand this basic fact and lacks gratitude is destined to be isolated eventually. People like this have one more characteristic. This is the fifth. They only talk about themselves and don't listen to others. Once there was a major business tycoon whose cooperation I absolutely needed for a national project. At our important meeting, just as I was about to explain the project's overview, he would immediately cut in with his own war stories. Oh, about that when I was young. I couldn't get a word in. An hour later, I had barely said anything. That tycoon nodded with satisfaction and said, I understand well." This was a truly meaningful meeting. And then he left. He hadn't listened to a damn thing. In the end, that project went nowhere at all. Childish people are like this. They can't have a conversation. You can't work with people like that. A real adult is someone who can talk about their failures as funny stories or lessons, not just their own heroic tales. A person who doesn't blame others for their failures, who learns something from them, and who can use that to help others, saying, "Don't you make the same mistake." That's a real adult. Remember that well. Blaming others, being sullen, not being grateful, not listening. All of that is just an extension of being a child. Even if they wear a suit and have a title, if they're still a kid at heart, it's the same no matter what they do. People like that just drag others down, poison the atmosphere, and hold everyone back. But inevitably, some people like that will mix into the world. You can't avoid it. That's why the important thing is not to mistake them for adults. The more seriously you treat them, the more your own heart will wear down. If you have time to reason with a baby, you should take responsibility for your own work and move one step forward. If the number of adults who lead by example increases even a little, this country can still get back on its feet.